Good afternoon, everyone. Guys, so it seems like things are not going well for the Ukrainians. And it looks like people are starting to talk about it now. So what looks like's happened in Ukraine, so it's been all over the media, it's been all over, the mainstream, how Ukraine are smashing the Russians in the Kursk region, how they're taking ground, and the Russians are absolutely helpless. Well, turns out that may not actually be the case. So the theory behind this incursion or this invasion into Russia, and guys, sorry if that sounded negative, we can't take anything away from how well the Ukrainians are fighting. They're up against an absolutely enormous enemy, and if it wasn't for the support of the West and the continued the bravery of those soldiers and the people on the front line, their country would have fallen a long time ago. Now, we have to be realistic about this situation. The theory behind the Ukrainians pushing into the Kursk region was that the Russians would then have to divert troops into that region to deal with that threat. Doesn't look like that's happened. It doesn't look like that's been successful. There have been other successes in this invasion into Russia. And guys, this is a massive moment. When people say, will World War III be started in August? Will World War III happen? When will it happen? Look what's happening. I don't know how politicians have not come up there and said, guys, we're in a war. But then it leads you down the not a rabbit hole, but down the thought process of, okay, when would our politicians tell us we are actively involved in a war? So if you live in the United Kingdom, it's an open secret that, we already have British military in Ukraine operating, suspected to be, I'm speculating, I'm analysizing, I think analysizing is a word. If it isn't, it should be, that these British forces that are in Ukraine, it would be fair to speculate that these guys are operating some of this, or if not operating it themselves, stood behind somebody and telling them what buttons to press. Because a lot of this equipment's sophisticated. It's not just like you can give somebody said piece of equipment. You have to have a whole architecture behind that. So sorry guys, I went on a tangent there. Let me read you this art. In fact, I'll read it. In fact, I'll share it. This article that's come out about the Ukrainian incursion and how it could be not going to the Ukrainians' plan, but it could actually feed into Russia's. It could actually help Russia. So Ukraine's gamble against Ukraine. Russia risks becoming a blunder. The Ukrainian advance into the Kursk region has so far failed to achieve one of its main objectives, diverting Russian troops from the front lines of eastern Ukraine in a bid to reshape the battlefield. So we've seen that, guys, and I've been showing you and sharing with you on the map what's actually happening. The Russians, as soon as this happened, the Russians thought, oh, that's what you're doing, is it? And the Russians pushed even harder in the east. So, it looks like the Ukrainians in that context could have actually, if they'd have not made this attack, if they'd have not done this move, maybe the Russians would have been a little bit slower moving forward. We don't know, of course, because nobody has a crystal ball. Ukraine's surprise August incursion has achieved other goals, including dealing a blow to Russia's image of strength. For the longest time, I've been saying the Russians are not as strong as people think. The Russian military, because of the way they're training, their culture, their history is set up, they don't have a strong military. All right. Destroying military assets. Yeah, a lot of Russian military assets have been destroyed, and taking back prisoners for negotiation leverage. Yeah. So they've taken a lot of Russian prisoners. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. No, I'll look up. Excuse me, guys. So they've got a lot of prisoners now, and they can negotiate for these prisoners, and it puts Ukraine in a better position. But the failure to move more of the more crucial goal to divert troops has opened the door to criticism of Kiev's military gamble. You can't criticize people for making a decision if the decision turns out wrong. This is warfare. people are trying to, ultimately people are trying to do to you what that you're trying to do to them. So each side's trying to outsmart the other side. You can't really criticize people when things go wrong, and that's kind of one of the biggest problems of this whole the Ukrainian structure, the Russian structure. They give too much criticism on people when things go wrong. Things are inevitably going to go wrong. If you've done your crossed every T and dotted every I, you shouldn't be throwing unnecessary criticism at people, especially as Russia makes advances over the war's 600-mile eastern front line. Russian forces have continued pounding away in Kiev. Sorry, guys, it shows my level of immaturity when I'll not say anything. Taking vast swaths of territory in the past month and closing in on the key rail junction of the town of Pokrovsk in the Donbass region. So, I've been saying they're pushing towards this town of Pokrovsk. I've been saying this is a key town. I've been saying that this is going to be one of those locations that where when it's taken, when they've managed to do that, that's going to change the whole battlefield. And I think that's going to be one of the triggers for NATO, for the EU, for France and the allied forces who've already got a mission. Guys, they've already got a mission name for when they send boots on the ground. It's called I may get it wrong, guys. I may get it slightly wrong, but it's called something like the European Union Military Training Mission Ukraine or something like that. I'll put a link in the description so you can look at it yourself. But basically what this would mean is they're going to put troops on the ground in Ukraine, and the pretense of that is, right, we're sending all these troops out of Ukraine to train them, then we're sending them back. It's a lot of to and fro. We might as well just bring our instructors forwards. And again, this is going to open up mission creep, like with the F-16s. Like with everything else, this is going to open up mission creep. Remember when this conflict started and Germany, when the 2022 invasion started, and the Germans said, yeah, we will just, my German accent's terrible. Well, when the Germans came out and they said, yes, we're just going to give helmets and body armor and humanitarian aid to the Ukrainians. Now, there's Leopard tanks, there's F-16s, there's long-range missile systems. There's all sorts of wild stuff being plowed into the Ukrainian front line. Now, what we're going to get, and the next thing is, because the Ukrainians are running out of men, they don't have anybody left. They're trying recruitment, they're trying conscription, they're trying all sorts of stuff. But the reality is, from articles I've shared, from videos I've done, a lot of the people on the front line, they just don't want to fight. And the problem there is when the Ukrainians don't want to fight, if you've got a unit of say you've got 100 men in your unit, you've got 100 men, they're ready to fight, they're ready to go forwards, they're experienced, they're ready, they're going to go and do this. Okay, let's reinforce them with 500 conscripts. What happens? Those conscripts, they don't want to fight. So those 100 men who want to fight, who want to push forwards, who want to take ground, they have to have two things. Either they have to push forwards without these guys because they're not going to do it, or they have to work with those guys and try and motivate those guys to push forwards. So, it's never a good idea. It never works. It's through all of history, conscripts have never been good fighters. They've never been able to drastically change the outcome of. You can argue about Stalingrad. They've never really been able to argue the. They've never really been able to change the face of a war. The Russian system is set up in such a way that that's how their military. That's how their military is. So they've set and structured their whole military to use soldiers like that. But the NATO military, they're not willing to take that kind of losses. They're not willing to look at that sort of casualty rate. They're not willing to look at that sort of attrition rate. And by doing so, they give their soldiers a lot better training, which then makes them better to operate on the ground. They can work better in a team, and together they can become, greater than the sum of their own parts. So, yeah, so let's just quickly go to the war map, guys, and I will, hang on, let me move it because that's not right. hang on, right down here. And this region of Pokrovsk, they're talking about this, and every day it gets closer and closer. So if you think about the small amount of ground that the Ukrainians have taken in the east of Ukraine, sorry, in the Kursk region, I'm just going to share this with you now. How do we do that? We go there and then there. This one. So this is the region here, guys. This is the Donbass region. You've got Donetsk here. You've got Pokrov. Let me zoom in. So you've got Pokrovsk there. So this is the day before this is the day before the invasion. So this is the day before the Ukrainians pushed into Russia. Again, guys, forgive my emotional immaturity. So this is what the ground looked like, and I'm just going to skip forwards real quick and watch how much ground the Russians are taking in this region. Just look at that. It's absolutely huge. And then there's obviously ground that's going to be taken today that'll be put on obviously tomorrow. And this is the region here because of the north and south trade routes, guys. This, once the Russians take that town, and it seems like it's inevitable now. Once they do that, that's going to put pressure on the rest of Europe to say, right, okay, do we accept that the Ukrainians don't have control anymore? Do we accept that right now we need to send troops on the ground? They've already given this a name. They've already given this operational funding. And it seems to me that, well, from what we're seeing, it could be like a week or something. It could be a little bit more. But if the Russians keep pushing at the rate they have been pushing, it is literally a matter of days, maybe a week or two at the very most, when that town falls. And guys, that is going to put huge pressure on the rest of Europe to push troops into Ukraine. Remember, President Macron, he said the two tests would be if the Ukrainians lose significant ground in the east of Ukraine and if he is asked. Well, we already know that they've been asked. And the next thing is the significant ground in the east. I think this Pokrovsk is going to be not the canary in the coal mine. It's going to be not the straw that breaks the donkey's back, but it's going to be the significant event that makes the rest of the European Union push troops into the ground, reinforcement in place, and then that's going to just set the whole thing as a huge escalation. Guys, that is it for today. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm going to Mag to Grid. Don't forget to like and share my stuff, guys. I really appreciate it when you do that. I'm going to try and answer every one of your comments now, and I will see you guys later.